Hello, today we are talking about when Mike was homeless.
Oh, fun.
Please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can be notified when we put up new videos. Hello, I am Tara, the author of the Dining on a Dime cookbook, where you can eat better, spend less. We have a new hardcover with full color pictures and over 1,200 recipes and tips to help you save money on your grocery bill. Check it out at livingonadime.com. Hello guys! So we're kind of going through a little series of how I lived on $300 a month and then how Mike and I met. And before Mike and I met, we need to tell you about how when Mike was homeless and how he got out of that. We get a lot of people who will say, oh, well, you've never been homeless, so you don't know what it's like to not be able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and all that. Well, he's actually been homeless. So, yes, he has been there. We do know what we're talking about. So, we're going to give you Mike's story today.
Yes. The story I was not really wanting to tell. So, there was a point, I lived with my parents longer than I should have. And I was 23 and I was living with them, and I was working jobs and not really being very wise with the money. So I basically had no money. And I had been kind of stupid and got credit cards when I was in college because in college they told me you deserve this. And
your parents never really taught you about money.
No,
so we need to say that.
Yeah,
you were never taught how to properly manage money.
To them, money was kind of a secret, and we don't tell you what's going on. We just know we were just aware at times things weren't good. But we didn't know for sure when things were good and when things were bad and what was going on at all. There was like no discussion of money. But when I was in college, I had been working a job for a long time and pretty much spending my money all the time before that. And in college, they had these booths right there, and they would say, hey, you need to sign up for this credit card because you deserve to do something nice for yourself. And I was stupid, and I bought into that, and I charged up some credit card debt. And later, other things had happened, and I ended up kind of living back with my parents up at their house. And one day...
So just so you guys can kind of put it in perspective, he was living in Texas going to college when that happened. And then his parents talked him into moving up to Colorado to work for them. And so then he moved up to Colorado. And so then he was living in Colorado.
Yes, yeah. But that wasn't really working out. So I got a different job and was making some money, but not a whole lot. And I still had the debt, and I was still not really saving any money. But there was one day where circumstances that I'm probably not going to go into right now on the family situation meant that I had to leave like right now. And
not even time to really pack.
No, I had to leave like with no notice at all. It was kind of a rough situation. But anyway, I grabbed everything I could that was mine and put it in my car, and I left. And I thought, wow, I was kind of glad a little bit because there were some kind of really difficult things in the family, and I just could not go back. And I think the feeling was mutual at the time. And so clearly, if I had felt differently about it still would not have been an option. Well, first thing I went out and I just kind of sat in a parking lot at a store, and I thought, wow, what am I going to do now? I really don't know. I felt good for not being sort of stuck anymore in a certain situation. But at the same time, I felt really bad, like, oh, now what am I going to do? And a little more backstory on this. This was on a weekend, and a couple days before that, I had a job that was fairly new to me, working at a restaurant in a technology company's plant. And I'd been there about 2 weeks, and I was carrying a pan of boiling cheese, and they didn't clean the floors very well in there. And I slipped on the floor, and the boiling cheese went all over my face. And I got hurt pretty bad because I banged my head on a giant stand mixer. And after that, they came over and said, the people at the work, "You're not going to sue us, are you?"
That was your clue. You should have sued him.
And I was really angry because I thought,
And you would have had your
dude,
money.
I just fell on the floor, banged my head on a giant metal thing, and got boiling cheese all over my face. And all you can ask me is, "You're not going to sue me? Like, can you help me off the floor?" So this was 2 days before the event where I ended up leaving the house that I was living in at the time. So I had no money, no job. I had some credit card debt, and really no place to go. And yeah, I know it was partially my fault for not having saved really, and for letting myself be in debt. And that's one thing I want to say is a lot of what we hear from people is you don't know what it's like to have all these situations. But the thing is, the majority of the time, partly it's you weren't prepared.
Well, and that's also why we keep saying save and pay off your debt while times are good, so that if something happens, you have the money. We have been through it. COVID is nothing. There is the majority of people who have had issues with their money in COVID could have saved when times were good, so that when it hit and they were out of work for 6 months, they would be okay. We have been there. Mike has been there.
The main thing on
That's
this
why.
is I think people that are struggling now, for the most part, I'm not saying everybody, but for the most part, your situation was already right on the edge of breaking. And what happens is when people in America these days, when the good times happen, people push themselves right to the edge of being able to live just barely within what they have. And they often say, "I live paycheck to paycheck." Paycheck to paycheck is like an emergency. You can't live that way all the time. So if you live paycheck to paycheck in the good times, then the slightest bump in the road is going to make you crash, completely crash.
And that's what happened to you.
And that's what happened to me. I was stupid, okay? But I also have to say, there's a point where a teenager says, I really want to move out. How can I move out? You start kind of writing down bills and figuring out things and looking at your job and saying, how can I do this? And I did get a message very strongly that things are really hard and things are really difficult. I was told this by a parent. And it's almost impossible to live on your own anymore. You really have to do all this stuff. And I was terrified to try, because when I would say, "Hey, here's a list I've been making," that was kind of the response I would get. And so it was kind of a combination of things, but in the end, I was irresponsible not having any money at all and having debt. So I found myself sitting there accounting in my mind what I'm going to do. And I was just thinking, I have nothing. I have no money, no job, but I have my car. And I had an American Express card, which was another one of those things that they persuaded me in college that I deserve it and I'm really awesome if I have a gold card. And I was paying a yearly fee to have a gold card. Why? Because they told me that it would make me more important somehow. And it never really occurred to me to ask myself, how is this really helping my life, or how's it making me more important? So,
well, and you did grow up in a situation where what people thought of you was very
really
important.
It was very, very important.
Yeah.
And if there was something that wasn't working out too well, you didn't tell anybody. Like, that was your own thing to have to figure out. Yeah. Well, the American Express card required me to pay it off every 30 days. Like, there was no possibility. On a regular credit card, you can carry a balance and there's a little bit of interest, and you shouldn't be doing that. But if there was a life and death, you're going to be homeless. You might be able to kind of pedal really fast for a couple of months to get that fixed. Well, in this case, there was just no option to extend payments on this card. I was thinking, I have no cash, I have no job. Right away, I need to go get a job. So I was trying to go figure out how to get a job. And a lot of places were saying, come back a week from Thursday and stuff like that. And I think the first day I was pretty shell-shocked, so I wasn't really sure what to do. And I went and talked to a few people I knew and asked them their thoughts on that. In the end, I realized there was a national forest near us, and you can go in the national forest, you can camp there, you can stay there, you can hike there, and there are no restrictions, and there are no facilities. So like no bathrooms, no rangers, no nothing. So it's just,
Showers,
you're
yeah.
basically just going out into undeveloped land where they won't tell you to leave. So I thought I'm just going to go out there and spend the night in the car and try to figure this out. Well, I was pretty pretty fearful person then, and it was really hard when it was cold. It was cold and it was really hard staying in the car
What time of year was it?
all night. Um, it was the summer, I think. Oh, actually, no, I think it was the late spring in Colorado.
It would have
But
been cold.
in the mountains, it's significantly colder than on the front on the ground in front of the mountains. And so I had blankets, and I had a blanket or two and a jacket and a few other things. But it still was really cold, and I wasn't sleeping very well because I was terrified about every little noise I heard. and it was, that first night I really didn't sleep at all. But pretty quickly I was thinking, I have to figure out a way to make this work. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do for expenses that I already have, like food? And I don't recommend doing this, but I thought, well, I've got that card. If I could, in those days, you couldn't go to a grocery store and charge groceries. So
And you didn't have cell phones or anything like
there were
that.
no cell phones. There was nothing like that. So I had no phone either. But I did have a P.O. box, and it was already paid for the year because I had already paid, and it wasn't very expensive. But I had that American Express card, and the only place you could use an American Express card was at a gas station or a convenience store. And it was really not the best plan, but I went and got a little bit of food at 7-Eleven. And I thought, I really have to get a job now, because not only do I need to find a place to live that's not in my car, but now I have to pay this bill when it comes in 30 days. And I don't have any money.
And there wasn't, you have to realize back then, there wasn't food banks. They didn't have food banks or anything like that, really. So you couldn't just go to a food bank and get food. I mean, occasionally there would be, something here and there, but there really wasn't food banks like there is now.
Well, and I saw there were things like, in those days it wasn't like today, where on almost every corner in a larger city somebody's standing with a sign saying, well, help, please help, or whatever. Only a very few people did that, and I didn't feel right to do that. And I was thinking, I'm not really that desperate, am I? but I kind of was. But for whatever reason, it didn't really occur to me to think to go out there and do that. It's not that I was too proud to do it, as much as it just never even really occurred to me I should do that. My first thought was, I need to get a job really fast. And then I thought I could live in my car with the job, if necessary, until I get enough money for something else. So I was using that American Express credit card for the very minimal amount of gas and food. And I was really trying to keep it at a minimum because I didn't want to rack up a big bill and have no way to pay it. And again, it was the whole, you got to look good, your credit's got to be good. And I was thinking in my mind, I could ruin this for a really long time if I'm not really careful what I do with this card. So I was really not using it. Right away, I went and got a newspaper, because in those days there was no internet. And I was looking for jobs, and I was looking for houses. And eventually, it didn't take me very long on the job. I went to a temporary agency, and I filled out a lot of things, and I got kind of on some lists for doing temporary work. It took probably 2 weeks before I was actually able to get into somewhere where I could work and get paid. Well, actually, I think I was working a little earlier, but I didn't get paid till later. During that time, I did have a friend who said, hey, come sleep on my couch, for a couple days if you need to. And I really appreciated that. It was nice not to be out in the cold, but it didn't work out too well, and I was kind of imposing, I think. And so,
Well, you quickly learned that friend wasn't quite as good of a friend as he thought.
well,
They were, so it didn't work out quite very well.
Yeah, but also, yeah, it's not. Some people just aren't really. Their lives are not really equipped to handle having other people with
having
them.
company. Yeah.
And so I appreciated it, but I realized this isn't going to work too well. So I was back in the car again. I got a job making the absolute minimum wage, which in those days was $6 an hour. And I don't know how that translates to now money. With $10 an hour?
Probably be about 10 now.
It's less than what's now minimum wage.
Yeah, that's probably
in
kind of
comparative money. And at the same time, it had been
well, minimum wage back then was like $4.50, I think.
yeah, but the thing is, the
Yeah.
$6 then would compare to
About $10
a lot less than the 15 or whatever dollars
Yeah.
that people think is
Oh, yeah.
is starving wage now.
Well, okay, just so people know, we know the minimum wage is $7.50 in a lot of the country. I got this on the last video, but a lot of states have passed $15 minimum wage, so that's what we're going with.
So basically, what I was doing was I tried to think what is the absolute bare bones minimum I need to survive, and I was thinking I need shelter, I need food, I need
Gas.
then I thought, well, I need to be able to have some money somehow, and so I thought I need gas and food, and those were kind of the things. I just kind of cut it back to the absolute minimum. I was like, I used to be in the mindset of, well, I absolutely have to have this or this and this, and being in that situation really put me in the mindset of thinking, I absolutely have no idea how to do this, and I have to do it right now. And I think the pressure of that kind of made it more likely. Like if I didn't have that pressure, I probably would have continued wasting
And I
money.
think that's the problem with people nowadays is they don't have that pressure.
Yeah.
Because they can go to the food bank. They can go to, churches. They can
Feeling-
stand on the street corner.
Yeah, feeling desperate made me very creative really fast.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the job thing, and the funny thing with the job thing is, I think I used my friend's address, and I don't know what I used for a phone. I can't remember. Probably something like that. And I gave my PO box as my address because I was just trying to think. I've got to figure out how to do this. So I got the job. I started working it, but it wasn't going to pay for a couple weeks because when you first get a job, it doesn't pay until after you've worked the work. And at the same time, I was looking for housing, and it was a college town, and housing was frightfully expensive. And I was thinking, I have to do this cheaper. So I found, I looked in the newspaper, and I remember going and touring a couple of rooming houses. And oh my goodness, I was thinking, this is really expensive for a complete dump. But it was a lot less expensive than anything else. And so what I would have had in that is a room about twice as big as a closet, with the only thing that would fit in there was a bed. And I would have to share a bathroom down the hall with other people. And I was prepared to do that. I was a little bit unsure if I really wanted to, but I was prepared to do that. But for a couple of extra days, I thought I'm just going to live in my car since I'm already doing it and look and see what else I can find.
What'd you do for showers?
Well, I don't recall for sure. I do know when I stayed at my friend's house, I did take showers there. But if it were nowadays, I would go to like a truck stop or something like that.
Planet Fitness. Yeah.
Or the thing is, Planet Fitness here, you can pay $10 and get a membership. So I probably would have done that just for showers.
And the bagels and pizza.
Well, yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Wow, these days things are a lot more cushy.
That's all. People don't realize how cushy you have it
back
now.
then, a health club would have been like $75 or $100 a month,
and you would get bagels and pizza.
And you'd have to sign like a year contract. And there's just no way I wasn't in the situation to be able to do that. Wow, now that I think about it, why is anybody homeless now?
That's our point. Yeah.
And I wasn't. And I think if I didn't have that credit card, especially if it's now, I wouldn't be opposed to necessarily. For the absolute minimum, I might have asked somebody for help somewhere. But then I would have gotten off that really quick because it just makes me not feel great. and I would rather work it and try to make that succeed. So anyway, I kept working the job, and I looked for some more places to live, and I found a listing for a place, and it said that they need a roommate, and the price was a lot cheaper. Back in those days, a typical place might be $400 to $800 a month, and nowadays it's more like $1,500 to $1,800 for a one-bedroom apartment here. Mm-hmm. But in those days, that was a fairly comparable price to that price now, so it was just really expensive, and there's just no way I could pull that off. And so I found a listing for a roommate wanted for $225 a month. Well, what I found out was it was a roommate in a house with 3 other guys. And unaccustomed to living with people I didn't know, and I was a little bit afraid to do that. But at the same time, I was thinking, hey, desperation is the mother of invention. So I went and I talked to them, and they interviewed me like it was a job because they wanted a good roommate. And so I listened to them and I thought, wow, this sounds like a good deal. And I went ahead and agreed to do that. And I think I kind of told them my situation was I'm kind of in a little bit desperate situation here. I don't have a place at all. How quick can I get in? And they did some checking on me, and I don't know why, but somehow they agreed to let me come and live there, even though I had only barely had a job and stuff like that. But it turned out that it was a really good learning experience for me. And I think altogether, there was probably about a 3 week period where I was kind of mostly living in the car. And and it was only that short of a time because, like I said, I was kind of terrified about it, and I became creative really fast because the need was there. And kind of the plan that I had with that American Express card is I have to get a job really fast and be able to have just enough money to pay it. And once I got into the apartment, I can't even remember if I paid. I must have paid them ahead of time. But once I got into the apartment, I think I paid them the rent, and then as soon as I got the slightest bit of more money, I paid off that card completely because you had to pay it off in order. So then I charged stuff for the next month while I was paying off the card at the beginning because I didn't have any money because I hadn't worked the job long enough. But in the second month or the second paycheck I got, I ended up having some extra, and then I said I'm stopping using that card completely now. And at the time, I was realizing, okay, I'm just gonna hang out here at this house, and I guess I'll read books and listen to music and go hang out at the mall because in those days you could do that. Just walk around and see people and do things when I was outside of work that didn't require spending any money. And I think going to the park and just different things like that. And it turns out that one of the roommates had a big TV, so occasionally we would all be able to watch the big TV. And then at the same time, I went to the grocery store and I was thinking, how can I figure out the cheapest possible way to feed myself now that I'm not using a credit card at a convenience store to do it? So it's kind of like the snowball progression. It's like paying off debt. Uh, and at the grocery store, I spent probably an hour or two one day just walking around thinking, wow, look. And keep in mind, I was 23. I look and I was thinking, wow, I can get this giant bag of pre-made hamburger patties for $10. I think it was $10, which I know it's cheaper than now, but that was a pretty good deal back then. And then I said, wow, here's the sauce aisle. What if I just got 5 different kinds of sauces and I just put it on some basic rice, just make some white rice, I know some people are going to freak out about that. Make some white rice, make a hamburger patty and a vegetable of some sort, and put the sauce on it and call it good. And that's what I did like every meal for sure for the first month. So it just was a progressive kind of improving and realizing I have to get rid of this debt and I have to learn how to pay for my bills and things like that. And what's funny is even at the $6 an hour, which is pitifully low income, and again, as I say, the minimum wage now in most places in America, it gives you more buying power than $6 gave me back then. But I still realized when I completely cut it back and kept in perspective, this is better than living in a car. I learned how to live inside of the $6 an hour that I had. And the $6 an hour, even after taxes, was less than $6 an hour. So I think I just figured out how to live within that money. And it didn't take very long for me to realize, wow, I actually can live on my own and pay my own bills. And I don't really need people to help me now that I've figured out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
then,
and you'd been conditioned to believe that you would never be able to do that on your own.
yeah,
So
unfortunately.
that was part of what you were fighting against too.
And I think with our kids, we've really tried to really set them up to be able to understand that they can succeed and hopefully to give them some tools to be able to do that. But mostly it's an attitude and a belief it's a belief that you can, and then I'm a problem solver. I'm not just going to let the whole situation avalanche on me. Actually, after I had gotten into that apartment, I did start eventually I got paid more and I learned how to live better within my means. And then I was able to go do other things that I couldn't afford to do. Unfortunately, my highest priority was not paying off the debt that I had because I also had a credit card, or maybe two. that were maxed, completely maxed, because that was the college thing, learning that I deserve to have all that stuff at college that everybody else has, and I really didn't deserve it. So that was definitely also a learning experience for me that I wouldn't have had if somebody had given me something or bailed me out of the situation. So like if people said, well, poor guy, look at the bad situation he's in, and they gave me stuff, I would have probably kept living that way. And so I think I kind of really learned it in a smaller sense than getting further into life with more debts and things like that.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, so it did eventually, I got to be making more money with less expense. Unfortunately, when we got married, I still didn't really have a great plan. And I still had that debt. And
Yeah, we'll go into that probably the next video
yeah,
or two.
so that wasn't wise. But the thing is, I have lived in a situation of super desperation with no money, no place to live, really no one to fall back on.
He had no family to help, nothing.
And I, I think those situations in life are kind of important for people to understand that you're not going to die in that situation. And instead to look at it as a process. Okay, what is the absolute bare minimum I need, and then build from there. And people in America don't want to do that right now. People want to say, I really need my iPhone with the highest plan. I really need all the cable channels. I really need all these things that other people have because they have them. I need them. And when you're in a situation where you have absolutely no other choice, all those needs go away.
Yep.
So.
All right, guys, we are going to talk about how we met in our next video. Please visit us at livingonadime.com, and we will see you guys next time.